The presenting sponsor for the Intersections podcast is Lynn, Pinker, Hurst, and Schwegman. Built on a culture of winning, these trial lawyers have proven experience, elite preparation, and relentless focus in the areas of commercial, intellectual property, and employment litigation. Visit Lynn LLP to learn more. And thank you so much to the Lynn, Pinker, Hurst, and Schwegman Group for all you're doing to support the Intersections podcast. This episode is brought to you in partnership by Clay Cooley Automotive, family-owned, family-operated automotive company serving the local DFW Metroplex for over 22 years. Clay, thank you for all you're doing to make Intersections possible.
Everybody's starting to get World Cup fever. Dan Hunt was with us. He's a key player in bringing not only the World Cup to the United States, but especially the terrific agenda that we've got here in Dallas with 9 different matches. Fun conversation talking about that, but also his family, Hunt family, and all the work that they've done in the world of soccer.
Hunt family synonymous with Dallas, obviously. So much history, so much legacy here. Dan talks about how he fell in love with the game in 1986 at that World Cup and walks us forward really to today's World Cup in 2026 here, hosted in Dallas, hosted in America. It's a fantastic conversation and a great listen. Tune in. Welcome to Intersections. We're taking a multi-generational look at the critical issues facing America. Tom, introduce our guest.
We've got Dan Hunt today. Dan is the president of FC Dallas, and I might say soccer, but I think for today, we're going to actually use the real term and call it football, much to the chagrin perhaps of his brother. But more importantly, and thing we'll get in today, Dan was really the leader that led the effort of bringing the World Cup in part to the United States, but clearly the dominant position that our community in Dallas has as we go into it. Dan, only 2 weeks away now.
I can't believe we're only 2 weeks away. And I've gotten to the point where I introduce myself as, hello, my name is Soccer. So you guys can say that. Or if you're my godson, he calls me Uncle Tickets. But yeah, it's right here. In fact, the funniest thing is a childhood friend of mine, while I was driving up here, messaged me for World Cup tickets on the way, and he said, "Look, if Dallas doesn't work,
we've got to get to him on that."
I know we might be messaging you after this.
Good, that's okay. Come on, come on. You guys are in the trust tree. But he said if Dallas didn't work, LA would be his next choice. And I said, "Look, I've got some sway in Dallas, but not Los Angeles. But it's great to be with you guys today."
So let's start out with the question: are we ready, both here and nationally? And I guess to be fair, Canada and Mexico too. Are we ready for the World Cup?
We're ready. There's a lot of noise that goes on around these things, and you've seen different cities like New Jersey with the transit bill, the $150 bus fare. They're putting those things to bed. We are ready. I mean, Dallas's bid has been unbelievable, and I say this every time I speak on the World Cup. Monica Paul is our fearless leader of our LOC. She has done a fantastic job. She is really a special asset to the city of Dallas.
Yes. So one thing that you just said there stuck out is, why is Dallas's bid terrific? Like, what made us stand out? What were the elements to that bid that worked?
Yeah, when you think about Dallas, one, it's a rich soccer history here, and it dates all the way back to the late 60s and the Dallas Tornado. Those guys staying, building this youth soccer culture that's unlike any other in the United States. Let's talk Dallas Cup. Let's talk Sidekicks. Let's talk SMU soccer. Let's talk Dallas Burn FC Dallas, right? This is just a rich soccer market here, and you look at how many youth players produced. We're going to have 4 former FC Dallas products on this World Cup roster, which is amazing. But it's also the facilities. We have one of the greatest economic drivers in all stadiums, and Dallas Stadium, also known as AT&T Stadium. And then, you'll have Sweden here also at Toyota Stadium and Soccer Center there training. Czechia at our new stadium in Mansfield, which is really incredibly exciting, the home of North Texas SC, our 3rd division team. You have SMU involved. You have the Cotton Bowl involved. You have the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center involved with the International Broadcast Center. I mean, this is what people need to focus on the IBC, because this is where the storytelling of World Cup 2026 will take place. It will broadcast back to almost 200 countries there. My dad in 1994, he was proud to be the head of the World Cup bid with Jim Graham, the late, great Jim Graham. If you knew him, he was larger than life. And they were really the perfect combo because he was the party planner and my dad was the guy who went and executed. Jim was so much fun that he always wound up in the FIFA Tribune of Honor at World Cups, for generations after the 94 World Cup, whereas the rest of us sat out in the seats. But we have all these great things that are happening, but the International Broadcast Center really is something special. My dad was so proud of it in 1994. He said, Dan, you just don't understand. I was in high school, actually a ball boy at the 94 World Cup. I got to do the Spain-South Korea game, which was an amazing experience at the Cotton Bowl. So cool. But we have all these different assets. We're ready, but we have two amazing airports too, DFW, Love Field, obviously the renovations that have been taking place there. I mean, we are ready from that standpoint. Hotels. I mean, one of my favorite stats is we have a higher level of hotels here in the Metroplex at a lower than average national price for those hotels. It's affordable, right? It's this economy that we live in. And people ask me, what I'm most excited about. And I think couple things, but announcing that Dallas truly is a global city. We all know Dallas is a global city. You've been part of this leadership in building this community, did a fantastic job. But this is a global community and kind of unusual in that we're not on a coast. Usually that drives it or a waterway. So
that's a great overview. We're going to get into all that. But let's go back and talk about Dan Hunt a little bit. You mentioned your dad, Lamar Hunt, iconic figure in sports. Not just in soccer, but in sports. But I want you to talk a little bit about growing up in that family and especially his affiliation and appreciation of soccer going back to 1966 and the World Cup and what he saw that very few people saw.
Yeah, well, I'll start with 1962. That was his first match, which is a Shamrock Rovers match in Ireland. My mother, Norma, was a Rotary scholar. She went to North Texas State University, also known as UNT today. They recently named their soccer stadium after her, which was an unbelievable honor. It was really, really special. She was the most amazing human being. I know you knew her well too, but he went over to visit her. He was courting her. And I don't think he wanted to leave her over in Ireland too long. And so he went over. And this is a fact that I really didn't know for a long time, but that was actually his first match. Don't know who Shamrock Rovers played, but that was his first game. And he decided two things from that. And then the 66 World Cup happens. He actually saw it on TV, the 66 final, but he decided two things. The passion of the fans was just it was unlike anything he'd really ever seen before, that supporters culture. But secondly, he also thought a mom and a dad and a brother and a sister can kick a soccer ball. It could truly be a family game. And also some of the reason why he fell in love with tennis, started World Championship Tennis, American football, baseball, those games, even basketball to a lesser level are hard. Although you see these ladies now in the WNBA and it's really amazing. And our team right here, the Wings, got a bunch of young superstars, which is incredibly fun. But he fell in love, but he sees the 66 final on TV, immediately decides that his hometown of Dallas, Texas is ready for professional soccer. We kid that he was about 40 or 50 years too early, but he stuck with it, started the Dallas Tornado in 1967. And that was part of this unbelievable period in his life because from about 65 to 67, we talk about soccer, basketball investing in the Chicago Bulls in 1966, presiding over the NFL.
And that
AFL.
investment was, in today's dollars, pretty small.
Well, the best is it was 11.5% plus or minus for $67,000 in 1966.
I think that was a deal.
It was a good deal. But even better one was the Chiefs in 1959-60. I don't know what was the date of writing the initial check was $25,000.
Wow.
And that's a life lesson, and I'm sure we'll visit about it. I mean, my father had so many great lessons, but sticking with it. I mean, that was who he was. He stuck with it. I mean, unfortunately, World Championship Tennis went out of business. NASL went out of business. MLS almost went out of business. I mean, the NFL had some dark days, especially in the AFL days, but he stuck with it. And, I mean, he was just such an extraordinary person.
I think anybody would take those losses.
Yeah.
If you got the 25 and the 67,000. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Dan, what was it like, though? I mean, you grow up and you're at the dinner table. You're a young kid at the dinner table, and the talk is of these, which have turned out to be iconic franchises in sports across the board. What was it like, and did that really build where you came to be, leading a soccer franchise?
Yeah. First off, he was an incredible dad. He just was there. And something that really stands out, and I smile thinking about, especially every time I go back to St. Mark's, which was where I went to school, the number of times that I saw my father run across a field holding his luggage because he's getting out of a taxi, coming from the airport to come see me play whatever sport, football, soccer, run track. That is parenting right there. That is being there for your kid and supporting your kid. And my mom was the perfect soulmate for my dad because she was an extraordinary woman, and her efforts helped grow these games too. And not enough women get enough credit for this. I was so sad when Mrs. McCaskey didn't get inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame recently. She was a semifinalist, and unfortunately, she passed away after that, which I thought was such a shame. But there are 4 or 5 of these women that paved the way for what the NFL is today and need to be in Canton because there are going to be women that are going to make it as an official, as a team CEO, as a team owner, as a leader in this league. But there were people who paved the way for it. But my dad, the humility that he approached every single day with, that never say die attitude that he had, he was committed. He was always all in. And, what was fun about him is he knew his audience. My father had an ability to connect with people by understanding who his audience is. And both my mom and dad had really the special gift to make you feel like the most important person in the entire world. And that's such a unique gift. And they could—
How did they do that?
Yeah, my dad did it with not as many words, but having interest in you as a person, whether that was a 5-year-old kid or a 90-year-old adult. My dad could ask the relevant questions and start to build that connection. My mother was incredibly verbose, though, but she had this ability to—
So put the story on the other person.
Yeah, well, yeah. My dad would put the story, and pull the information, but he also had this ability to remember the details. I can't tell you how many times people said to me, I can't believe your dad remembers my spouse's name, my kid's name, my birthday, where I'm from, my parents. I got that all the time. My dad was able to extract that information. My mother would do it, but then my mother would say, my goodness, you look so great in that white shirt. Where did you get that? Have you thought about a modeling career? I mean, she just had this ability to elevate. She always said my mom was the best agent anyone could have. But it was the different skill set that they had. But that's a really unique quality to make you feel like the most special person.
Talk about, we get into the 90s. Pelé is the biggest name around the world. Maybe not in the United States, but around the world soccer. You tell a story, Dan, of meeting Pelé, which is a story in itself.
Pretty cool.
But you actually talk about how you viewed your father in that setting more than the meeting with Pelé.
Well, first off, they were honoring my dad at a U.S. soccer engagement in Washington, D.C., and it was pretty fun because we had run into Prince Albert of Monaco before, who my parents knew for a number of years, especially through a lot of the tennis stuff. And he just came right up engaging. In fact, ran into him recently, not at this last Super Bowl, but the Super Bowl before. And he wanted to hang out with Clark and I and talk for a bit. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And I'm going to go ahead and say that was because of Dad. But they had that relationship. So that was sort of just kicks off the whole thing. But seeing my dad being honored there and that the national medal honor winner there for U.S. soccer was really something special. But I saw Pelé there and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the king. It's the greatest. And I mean, it's almost this emotional moment, this kind of nirvana moment where you're like, wow, this is the guy who won 3 World Cups. And, they were sort of waving at each other and, didn't speak at the time, but my dad gets up and speaks, and he addresses Pelé in his speech, which, by the way, was total ad-lib. And my dad was exceptional at it. He could ad-lib anything. And he addresses Pelé in his full name. And I look over, and Pelé has a smile from here to here. I was like, well, wow, that's pretty cool. That's really special that my dad did that. And he made Pelé feel very special because he wasn't calling him Pelé, but he was calling him by his full name and thanking him and all the things. And then Pelé gets up there and speaks, and he addresses my father. And I knew that wasn't in his speech either. And I was like, wow, Pelé just said Dad's name. This is amazing. But after the event,
Dad must be really cool.
I was like, I knew he was, I thought he was a big deal. But then, I'm standing there and I hear this, Lamar. And I look up and Pelé comes running across the room and effectively jumps into my dad's arms like he had done on so many great goal celebrations. And I was like, he's a big deal. Dad's a big deal. And there's so many things. I mean, Pro Football Hall of Fame, National Soccer Hall of Fame, International Tennis Hall of Fame for my dad. But that moment in time, I was like, that is the king.
Okay, so Dan, give us 2 hallmarks of your dad's leadership and what he taught you that still live on today in how you lead, parent, etc.
I think starting with humility, right? We're fortunate to be in this position, and it's an honor to do this. And there are so many things that go with that, and things can go badly in life. Things can go great, and you can have success beyond your wildest dreams. But you need to remember that, it's much bigger than you. There are so many people that have contributed, that worked on. There's so much that luck goes into it. My dad told me one of his dad's favorite sayings, H.L. Hunt, is it's better to be lucky than good in the oil field. He said it a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think my dad also believed that too. But, I'm a big one believing that unless you walk a day in somebody else's shoes, you don't understand what's going on in their life and the challenges that they may face. And so if you approach things with humility, I think that breaks down a lot of, barriers. And then, the other one would be persistence. If it's because a lot of these leagues would have, floundered and died without it. And it's that work ethic. And nobody will ever have a work ethic like him, ever. I've never experienced anything like it. And I tell this story about him. Our boardroom in our old family office sat 26 people. And he had 2 assistants and Susie and Kathy. And every time you would go in there, he would have a memo at every single seat around the 26 seats that he had handwritten initially. They had typed. He would sit down, re-edit, pass over shoulder, stand up, move to the next seat, and do laps around the boardroom. The volume of thousands and thousands of memos that he produced is unprecedented. We have a lot of them. And I asked him one day, I said, Dad, why do you get up? He said, it's my exercise. And I was like, okay, if that's your exercise, then great. I probably shouldn't be bringing you the Sonny Bryant brisket sandwich with 1 packet of mustard, 1 packet of relish, and the Milky Way bar on the way back from the tunnels in downtown Dallas each day, if that's your exercise. But my dad's special gift, outside of being able to make you feel like the most important person in the entire world and breaking down any barriers, his ability to document ideas and translate them to paper was truly extraordinary, beyond all belief, that he could do these. He could come up with these ideas and put it down on paper. And that was also, you asked the question about dinners at home. His ability to talk through things with you, big or small, ask you about your day, work through issues, put it down on paper, and those things. Little known fact, my dad drew both the logos of the Kansas City Chiefs and FC Dallas at our kitchen tables. One at a house on Armstrong that unfortunately just recently came down. And then the FC Dallas logo was on our Arcady house in the Park Cities where I grew up, or most time growing up. He hand drew those logos. Okay. And so again, it's that ability. I have this football card, sports card collection. I recently, or acquired in the last couple of years, the foundation documents to the AFL. I wound up with the Denver Broncos copy, which was painful. But you could tell that he was the one who had written it. He came up with ideas and translated to paper. And it goes back to that famous story of how he founded the AFL, that he goes and flies out to Miami to see the owner of the Chicago Cardinals at the time, says, "No, young man, I'm sorry, I'm not selling the team, but you're one of like 7 or 8 people to come see me." So on his way back on airline stationery, who knew airlines had stationery at the time, he wrote the foundational documents to the AFL, which we have in our collection.
Well, he got into it, but trivia question. His dad's nickname was Games. What's Dan's nickname?
No idea.
Collector. Talk about, and we'll get to the soccer and that sort of thing, but I think it's fascinating. You have, correct me if I'm wrong, largest, most valuable football card collection in the world.
Yeah, I share it with my friend Robert Casterline, who's my art dealer, and I do have that, and my dad did call me the collector. Interestingly, it didn't happen until it was late in life, and actually, people always ask, what is the most meaningful gift that your parents gave you or your dad gave you? And obviously, I start with love, right? That's both my mom and dad, unconditional, and you could feel it. But my dad gave me a baseball, autographed baseball by Buck O'Neil, the Negro League player. And he put a note, and this is at the very end of my dad's life. In fact, after giving it to me, he went in the hospital the next day after my birthday and never got out. And on the note, he addresses me as the collector. And, and he talks about how Buck O'Neil was one of his late in life heroes. For what he stood for and what he was able to achieve. And so it's a piece of paper, but it's my favorite physical gift that my dad ever gave me, and just the message and what it meant. But of course, I wound up as the collector because I was the kid whose dad had me collecting coins, stamps, sports cards, although he didn't like sports cards. In fact, at one point, my mom bought me the Fleer 1986 basketball set that's Michael Jordan's rookie and everybody else's, and with the stickers, and she paid $900 for it, and my dad lost his mind. I thought he didn't speak to either of us for a couple days.
Well, I'm going to have Dan tell a little bit more about this, but to put this in perspective, yesterday, Wembanyama's rookie card sold for
$5.11 million.
Wow. Holy
and you've
moly.
got 300,000. You've got 16 of Joe Namath's rookie cards.
We do, and we have the highest graded one.
And you've got a football card that goes back to 1894. You got to tell us a little bit more about this collection.
Yeah. So I'll go back to, a person who I have so much admiration for and a close friend and mentor and a confidant is a guy named Robert Casterline, and he's been my art dealer since I was 24. I walked into a gallery, said I like that piece of art, and I've been buying ever since. So more than half my life now. But he called me about 9 years ago, and he said, "Hey Dan, you know what? You know what I did with the Peanuts?" So he had the Charles Schulz collection. So if you go to the museum out in California, a lot of that collection there, he had the original Snoopy, and he did that as a 23, 4, 5, 6-year-old. He started buying this stuff, collecting it, all that, and then he helped donate and put that collection together out there. He said, "Well, I did that," and I said, "Yes, you've told me plenty of times. I've heard you say
heard
that.
The story.
I have lots of love for you." But he said, "We can do this with football cards." And he referenced the owner of the Arizona Diamondbacks who has the baseball card collection that's so famous. And he said, "We can do this with football."
Colangelo?
I guess that's who it is who has the collection. And he said, "We can do the same thing that they've done." And with football cards, I said, "Okay, great. Let's do it. But just don't call me unless we really need to talk about it because, man, I'm busy. I've got a lot of stuff going on. My daughter, my oldest at the time, was just about to be 2, and I said, I've got a lot going on, trying to process it all. I'm trying to work. This soccer thing is not easy, but we wind up talking all the time about it. And we have the good fortune of sort of 3 major collectors at once selling their collections, and so we aggregate, and we have the highest graded rookie set of all Pro Football Hall of Famers. So you walk into Canton, up until recently, you would walk into that exhibition of those cards. They took it down to rest it, take it out of the UV light. There are over 300,000 pieces. There may be over 400,000 pieces at this point. I don't know. I will say the one day that really I remember was driving down Walnut Hill, getting ready to get on the toll road, and he called me. He said, "We have a chance to buy one of the highest graded Bronco Nagurski cards of all time. And there's 1/9 and there's, I think, 6/8 in the PSA graded sets." And he said, "We got to buy it." And I was like, "Well, how much is it?" And he said, "It's $120,000. I almost put my truck into a light pole. And I said, just do it because it'll round out our collection. And it's just the have to have now. It's worth, I don't even know what it's worth today. But, you mentioned this Wemyama card and what a star he is. He's unbelievable. But we got Cooper Flagg here too. I mean, how exciting is that? And I think, he has some cards coming out and maybe, in the next month or two that I think everybody is coveting. These modern cards, it concerns me a little bit, but they're stores of value. No different than cards and stamps. And my dad had me collecting programs, tickets. I mean, my dad was a hoarder too. He loved to hoard stuff, and I had all this stuff, and so I've inherited a little bit of that hoarding mentality with it. But it's really special. It's that connection. And I recently was looking at, and it was a penny collection, and those blue books that you could buy over at 75 and Park, over there. Ed Hip's, coin dealer shop over there. But the memories is what it brings back. And my mom always said, you buy it because you love it. You don't buy it because you think it's going up in value. And the reason he and I did this was to preserve this legacy, because these cards would have been split up. This memorabilia would have been split up. There is a story to be told, and we store our entire collection in Canton, although we've moved some of it around periodically. This is about telling a much bigger story, something that means so much to people. And we're going to talk about World Cup today. The passion of fans, it's what makes the game. When my father was inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1972, he accepted it on behalf of the football fans of America. Right? He understood that the fans make the game, right? And what this means to generations of fans is you have a duty to preserve it if you can, and it's something that's been really special.
Your family has been on the ground floor of the development of soccer in this nation. You were working at the family office and then you got pulled in to lead FC Dallas. I want to talk about that, but give us a little bit of foundation to understand the evolution of soccer up to the point that you got involved. So family gets involved. You mentioned the tornado. NASL goes away in the mid-'80s, too early. MSL comes in 2001. MSL is right on the verge. If it wasn't your family and perhaps one other, it would have gone under. Can you just give us kind of a quick timeline, set a foundation for soccer up to the point where we can get you involved in what you're doing at FC Dallas?
Sure. So I mentioned 62, my father's first match, 66 TV, 67 Dallas Tornado. And, the league sort of morphed over time. Teams came and went. Pelé played in the league, Beckenbauer, Cruyff. I mean, these are three of the greatest players of all time. And they came and played, and really they helped set the standard for the nation, or at least bring the nation's attention to soccer.
Yeah, for the first time got involved. I mean, back when I was, we never played it.
Yeah, and then Kyle Rote Jr. here in Dallas, truly one of the great first American talents, and he was a world-class athlete. There was some show during the 70s that he won 2 years in a row where it was like an athlete's Olympics, and it was swimming, and it was doing this and doing that, and I believe he won it 2 years, like 72, 73 or something like that. Somebody, I can't even remember the name of it, but that's what a great athlete he was. I think Mark Spitz was in it. I mean, a number of just, unbelievable athletes, but soccer really started floundering.
And why was that? What happened?
Look, I think baseball was so entrenched, and then I also think football was really, on the upswing again. And then you had these two fellows named, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson on the heels of Dr. J. And then this young fellow named Michael Jordan who came in just as the leagues were dying out. And so the NBA just took off. And so I don't think it was exciting enough. There wasn't enough action. I mean, it's a little bit of what we still struggle with today. I mean, so when you think about, soccer, and this is a story about my dad. He did a study. My dad did lots of studies in life. But when the modern soccer goal was designed in the 1850s, the average height of a goalkeeper was sort of 5'7". They were your worst athlete, worst one with the ball, least talented with the ball. Now the average goalkeeper is around the world 6'2".
Well,
yeah.
He advocated lifting it a foot
he wanted,
and extending it a yard on each side. Right?
Exactly. And that would take scoring up to 6 or 7 goals a game. And that's something I think we can all get behind. I mean, look, let's think about the NHL. Smaller goalie pads, unbelievable, right? I mean, those games are so exciting, and love what the Stars have done, and make it so fun. Baseball, managing time in those things, and how they've shortened the game and they've sped it up. It's exciting. My dad, one of the big proponents, he thought NFL games were taking too long, so he was always a big proponent of getting as close to 3 hours. But scoring was really soccer, and he always thought soccer had the perfect amount of time, which was you can be in and out and watch a game in an hour and 53 minutes. And that's with extra time and everything else. So he was a big proponent of 1 foot taller, 1 yard wider. He thought it would just change the game. But it dies out, and then it's a wasteland because you have indoor soccer. Dallas Sidekicks are here. Tattoo. Yeah, all of that hysteria. Jim Graham. It was so great and cool. SMU soccer. Shellis Hyman, unbelievable coach. He was an FC Dallas coach. Took us to the finals there. And SMU was a powerhouse and still is a great team. I'm winning the ACC this last year.
Loved it.
I mean, as an SMU guy, this ACC thing has been the greatest thing ever. Even when Florida State and Clemson tried to keep us out.
Enough SMU.
They did.
Okay,
Oh my
back to
God.
soccer, back to
Come
soccer.
on.
Okay.
Yeah, come on.
So the World Cup after 90, which was in Italy, which was my favorite World Cup of all with my parents, because I got to go to 22 matches with my mom and dad in Italy, be with them for 35 days. There were no cell phones. There was no technology. And we can come back and revisit World Cup stories. But the U.S. is awarded that World Cup, and we had qualified on our own merit in 1990. First time in 40 years that had happened. So you started to feel an upswing again. And then in 94, we host, but the promise that was made to FIFA.
At that time, it was 24 teams, not 48.
Yeah, 24 teams. Huge accomplishment to qualify. Those Mexican teams had been pretty good. They've been success, but we made the promise to FIFA, if we're going to get the World Cup, we're going to have major Division I professional soccer. And so MLS was supposed to launch in 1995. Didn't happen because we couldn't get there. 96 happens. We originally were owning Kansas City, which was the Wiz, which I'm not sure was still a good name choice. And there was the Dallas Burn, but the Dallas Burn was league owned. Nobody took the Dallas team. And then Columbus didn't have an owner. Nobody was willing to take Columbus. And my dad thought, well, I think it's a great sports market. A lot of corporations there, wealthy families there, Ohio State, right. Obviously, the fandom that exists around that. So he took Columbus, and we did have some investors in that. We had all of the Wiz, which was renamed the Wizards, about maybe a year or two after that. And off we go. But off we go wasn't going very fast, very far. But there were moments of success. We were starting to develop young American talents. You saw that in the 2002 World Cup in Japan and South Korea. That's probably our best team in a World Cup in recent memory, led by Tony Santa, who recently went in the National Soccer Hall of Fame. We inducted him in early May, which was incredibly special. But that was a great team. But that was a product of Major League Soccer. But in November of 2001, I had come back from New York. I was actually working there for a technology company in the voice over IP space.
At that time, 10 teams?
In that time, in 2001, 12 teams.
12 teams.
12 teams.
The ownership was,
I think there were 8 owners.
8 owners.
9 owners for 12 teams. League-owned teams were Dallas and San Jose. And I'd come back. I had been working there right by the trade towers in 2001. So I was there as they were coming down. I come back to Dallas. I wound up living at my parents' house for about a week. My dad can't take it anymore. And he's like, okay, well, you're going to start doing yard work immediately. Idle hands. There was no idle hands is the devil's work or something. I don't know. But he was like, he had me out picking pecans. We had a pecan tree. He had me out, trimming the grass, planting flowers. And I very quickly realized 2 things. 1, living at home wasn't a great idea. And 2, I was going to work. And so I went to the family office, which was a great experience. My father's health was in decline starting in 1998 after the French World Cup. We were in France for that. And that's really when we started seeing some alarming signs. And then he went through a lot of treatment, a lot of tough times. And you don't know how much time you have. And time is, I spoke on this in Asia in 2019, time is the most valuable currency in the entire world. because you can't buy any more of it. And when it's gone, it's gone. And so I knew that. And so I wound up working in the family office. And frankly, I was a jack of a lot of trades, and I didn't do a lot of them very well. I was good at some of them. And I realized I was really passionate about soccer and football. That's easy to be passionate about. And then I realized I was somewhat passionate about real estate, which I spend a lot of time now outside of. Soccer's my day job, night job. Real estate's my in the break job, or during my lunch hour. And so those were things I realized I was passionate about. We were in the mining business at the time, which I thought was an interesting business and has really morphed into something special. We've left the mining business, but we have an offshoot from that, and it's been a quite creative business in Kansas City. And my dad had invested in it when he moved the Dallas Texans to Kansas City in 1963. He invested in this company, I think, shortly after to show that he was committed to the community. That was something else. My dad always showed his commitment. He would double down on things to show people that he was all in and invested on it. But I'm there 2001 on, and the darkest day maybe in the history of Major League Soccer was in November of 2001. We were in the Chiefs' offices. We're sitting there, and that was really sort of my first day on the job. And we're in Denny Thune's office, who was the vice president of the Kansas City Chiefs at the time, and we're having this league call, and it just goes badly. I mean, the tone of it, and I'm still in my early 20s when you hear, but it's people you respect, Phil Anschutz, Robert Kraft. I mean, the different investors, people who I looked up to and said, these are adults who've done great things, and have run huge business empires. And it sort of ended with everybody hanging up on each other, and the league office saying, and Mark Abbott saying, we're going to the federal courthouses in New York on Monday morning to file bankruptcy for the league. And so the call ended, and my brother Clark, true to form, looked at me, and we're sitting on the couch together, and goes, "Congratulations, you've been hired and fired on the same day." It's a very exclusive club. It's not a club you want to be part of, by the way. But our dad, that persistence, that never say die mentality, that commitment to the very end, he rallied Phil Anschutz and Robert Kraft, and the three of them took 10 teams. We contracted 2 teams. We lost 2, and we went to 10 teams, and we had 3. Phil Anschutz had 5.5.
So you had Dallas, Kansas City, and Columbus?
Yeah, it was, here are the keys to Dallas. Here you go. And it wasn't a city key. Here are the keys to the Dallas Burn, who play in the Cotton Bowl. And we had Columbus and we had Kansas City, and the half team that was split was interestingly San Jose. So the Crafts took a half and Anschutz took a half of that to split. I don't know how. I mean, it was a league on. Yeah, I don't know how that worked. And let me tell you, so that happens. League is going. Our league meetings were like sitting around a folding table, with a bad linen cloth on it. And you had, Phil, Robert, and my dad, and, Clark and myself, Jonathan Kraft, Tim Lewicki, all sitting there, Steve Cohen. That was sort of it. And the, Commissioner Don Garber. I'm thankful for Don in a lot of ways, because he was the right guy at the right time for the league. He was kind of that persistence, that salesmanship, that hustling around, because we didn't have a lot of to make anything of, right? I mean, we'd just been given Dallas for free. We got an MLS team for zero, just start covering the losses, and go from there. And we sold Salt Lake. I'll never forget this. We sold Salt Lake for about $3.8 million. That was the first of the new expansion franchises that we sold, and everybody's sitting around the table clapping a little bit. And Tim Lewicki,
and to put it in perspective,
that's an 03.
A franchise fee today would be $500 million.
$500 million, and then you're going to spend $3 to $500.
That's $500 million is a lot more than $3 million.
Yeah,
SMU education.
Yeah, there you go. No, and then you're going to spend $300 to $500 million on a stadium. On a brand new stadium. So you're starting to stare at $1 billion. And when you do this, and we're all, clapping, and Tim Lewicki stands up, who's the head of AEG at the time, and pounds his fist on the table and says, "One day, guys, we're going to get $15 million for one of these things." And I mean, you would have thought that, we had discovered, how to create gold or something. I mean, it was just, I mean, literally, it was the cheer in the room, and now we are.
So how did you make any money early days? Because it wasn't, this was long before I think the major TV contracts or anything like that. Was there any money being made? Was it just losses?
No money being made.
So what was that transition point then?
Yeah, well, soccer's still a tough business. Yeah. And look, sports is a tough business, right? And you have these great moments where you can get into a space if you're thoughtful. People ask me all the time about Clark. And they say, what is Clark's special talent? And it's really sort of twofold. It's his ability to manage expenses and to negotiate things. He is extraordinary. He's like no one I've really ever seen before, and how he does it. And he's very methodical and thoughtful.
Give us.
I mean, he's on the. Let me just say, he's on labor committees for multiple leagues, and he's on expansion committees for multiple leagues. And he was the head of the finance committee in the NFL. I mean, do you need any bigger credentials than those things? Is his ability to just sort of manage and work through things and think about it, and he will not answer you right away, which is really interesting when you talk to him, and it's infuriating when it's your brother. But it's a great thing is he'll go think about things. And
we've kind of lost that. Everybody wants to give a book review after reading chapter 1. Now, as opposed to reading the book. Yeah.
We live in the "what can you do for me now" instant, gratification world. But that's really his special skill set, and he probably does not get enough credit. Clark doesn't, for actually where MLS is today. I'm a firm believer that without people like him, MLS may have faltered at another point, and he deserves a lot of credit. And look, he gets the credit in Kansas City, right? Because that's public in a different way. The success that the franchise has had there. I mean,
it's the visibility of the NFL.
Yeah, it's unprecedented. But look, we are growing as a league. These expansion fees are great, but there's a constant need to reinvest. And one of the biggest challenges we face as a league is that you're competing against the PSGs and the Man Cities and the unlimited budgets that they have.
So two aspects of that then. One, back in the early 2000s, you were very much involved. You talked about your real estate experience in moving from the Cotton Bowl up to Frisco. Talk about that decision, because that became a critical one that created a lot of value for your family and for the franchise. And then talk about how you've had to adapt MSL to the rest of the soccer world and how you're going to change schedule to try to meet the needs of English Premier.
Yeah. Well, that's a multi-part question, but I'll have to try to remember it all, which I'm sometimes not great at. But we were in the Cotton Bowl, and you looked at where we were financially and the losses. So we started with the obvious one, which was the city of Dallas, to see if there's an opportunity to build a stadium with the city of Dallas. And the answer was there was one council member, and it got very little support. The offer was to go to far South Dallas and play in a stadium with a track around it. That was really for high school football. And that wasn't going to work, because we all know that tracks and sight lines and those things make it complicated. And then we had gone to McKinney, and we had a deal done in McKinney. And in the 11th and a half hour, it was early 2002, I think, or maybe mid 2002. They came in and said, look, we're not going to get to do this. We're not going to get to do that. So we're canceling this deal with you. And my dad's health was, he was in a really, really bad way then. I can remember the disappointment on his face and how much it hurt. But he read a story in the Dallas Morning News about George Purifoy and what the city manager of Frisco had accomplished. And so he went, they had lunch at La Hacienda Ranch. And I remember he drove up there, he came back. I was waiting for him at the office. And he said, yeah, George and I met. We struck a deal. We shook hands, and George is a man of his word. And we will have a deal with the city of Frisco, and we're going to build a stadium with a soccer complex. And I was like, that's a productive lunch.
Yeah.
I haven't had quite too many lunches like that. And that's how we wound up where we were. And look, the life lesson for anybody who wants to build a stadium or do a project, you can really never buy enough land. And that was one of my dad's core tenets. We should have bought everything around us for miles and miles. But we were in the soccer business. You had a business that was really struggling,
Right.
and didn't know if the league was going to make it. We signed a lease with the city that said if FC Dallas or MLS was to go out of business, the next tenant we would have would be the highest level of soccer in this country. And so we were obligated to whatever.
Wow.
We didn't know what that would be, right? You had no idea what that might be. So we were obligated to have a tenant there. But it's been a great relationship with the city. They're an amazing partner. Fast forward to where we are today, what was supposed to be, $183 million project, I'd like to report is not ahead of schedule or under budget. And it's going to be well over $200 million now, but we want to build something that is a statement for our community, a statement to the game of soccer. I think we're building what will be one of the finest small soccer-specific stadiums in the entire world. But you're right, you have to parlay these things, build those relationships. My dad had this ability to have these really close relationships, again, without a ton of words, but they knew my father was a man of his word. And that was one of his life lessons.
I want to jump to the World Cup, but kind of fast forward on the MLS. Tell us kind of how you see the state of MSL and Major League Soccer today, MLS, Major League Soccer today, and then talk about some of the changes that you're making, schedule and those sorts of things, to really kind of bring yourself into the global picture.
Yeah, well, this is the moment, right? This is what we've been waiting for, the return of the Men's World Cup, and then with the Women's World Cup on the heels of it, right? It doesn't matter that it's men's and women's. These World Cups raise both games, and it raises all soccer at all levels. But this is the moment for Major League Soccer, record franchise values, these new stadiums. I mean, what New York City is building there, what Chicago is building in their new stadium that they're building, I mean, these are extraordinary buildings. But a couple things happen because of World Cup 2026. One, Apple, who's our TV partner, who's done an amazing job. How Tim and Eddie Q and those guys think about things. I mean, you even the simplest things like watching a game once Apple took over, it was so much brighter and clearer. Well, there weren't new lights added in the stadium. I mean, it was just how they thought about the game presentation. So they've been an amazing partner, but they knew that this was the moment to take advantage of World Cup 2026. So they moved us.
Well, and MLS went to Apple and did a contract kind of jumping over traditional cable television.
Yeah. Right. We were the first one to really take the whole
streaming
deal. But here's the big change they made. They moved us in front of the paywall. So if you want to watch Ted Lasso, you can also watch FC Dallas play a game now in the same main screen. You can go to that. Before you had to buy a subscription package, and I don't think it was working as well because you were buying a subscription to buy another subscription. And instead now we're right there with their programming. And so whatever show you're a fan of on Apple, because you live in Dallas, you may see FC Dallas say, hey, I want to check out this product. So it's been great from a viewership standpoint. Second thing we said to ourselves, if we're ever going to change our calendar to a traditional European calendar, so what England does, Spain does, Italy does, this is our
start in August, complete in May. Into May.
Yeah, exactly. This is our moment to try it. But doing this, though, I think is a little bit of a credibility thing, and it does all sorts of things. The big one is it lines up that soccer mentality when people consume, right, the games. People are fans of these different leagues, and we want to make sure we're inclusive of those fans. So those are your sort of really your super soccer fan that you want to include. But people lose sight about this. Our transfer window. So a major part of soccer is the buying and selling of players. And it's something we do extraordinarily well in Dallas. We're I think, very far ahead of the curve of the rest of Major League Soccer. And that's because Clark and I are traditionalists in the game. We think about it on a much more traditional standard, developing your own players, acquiring young talents in other places.
You've got a reputation for the best young soccer programs anywhere in the nation.
Yeah, no, we do, and it's a credit again to the people. The people that are my coworkers there have done an extraordinary job. We have a lot of longevity with it. But now that our transfer windows line up, you're not buying and selling your best players in the summer when you're still in season and want to win a championship at the end of the year. That you're participating in the main transfer window, which is in July and August, and then the secondary transfer is in January where there's less revenue available. But the thing that everybody missed that I raised my hand at a league meeting and said, I think what we're missing is so many of the top clubs around the world have stables of players, 40, 50, 60, 70 players that they loan out all around. We now can take those young top talents on loan in our league because our seasons line up. Before, our seasons didn't line up. The coach then didn't want that to happen, and the agent didn't want that to happen. And you're sending a kid
opportunity away.
Yeah, because how do they get integrated? Are they fit? Do they speak the language? Or how are they going to fit in culturally? Now we line up. I think our league with 30 teams may see between 60 and 100 new players within a couple years that are top young talents. Now, maybe not the very best, right? You're not these kids like Estevao at Chelsea or a player like that of a pedigree that's so incredibly high, but you're going to get players that they spent $1 million on, $10 million, $5 million, and who are a highly regarded talent, and they're going to play in our league, and maybe we have an opportunity to keep that player. You transfer the player inside the league, and that's immediately. Can you imagine a league where every team gets 2 to 3 new starters within a couple of years that they would have never had a shot before? So I think it's going to improve the product. So, we're in front of the paywall now. We have lined up with European calendar. The thing that most people miss, here's your stat, is 91% of our dates in the new calendar line up with the old dates. You're only losing about 9% because we're moving our playoffs around. So it's really not that much of a change, but people get focused on it. And look, the thing we really got to overcome that people talk about is the cold weather markets early on in those seasons. Yeah. Playing in February, and I get it.
Chicago in February is a tough exercise.
Yeah, but I mean, Dallas, August 1st is a tough place too to play. It's a tough one. So these are things that we have to deal with.
Okay, now we jump to World Cup. You've been to 10 World Cups. As kind of an intro to our discussion on World Cup, what are your memories?
Oh boy, are you ready? I mean, do you have cots here?
You may have to bullet point them.
So we'll start. My first one was '86 in Mexico, and that's when I truly fell in love with the game of soccer. I mean, I liked it a lot. I played. Clark was playing at SMU at the time, but I fell in love with it because I got to see the passion. And what was really cool about '86 in Mexico was that was supposed to be in Colombia, but because of the cartels and the corruption, they pulled it. And Mexico raised their hand even after Mexico City having the terrible earthquakes in 1985. And you saw a nation rally around that. And I give you a couple of fun ones. We had a guy named Alejandro, and we rode around in a minivan in Mexico, and it was so fun. But we did go to the Pyramid of the Sun there, and I never forget that. There was a restaurant that was called Pyramid Charlie's, the food that made the Aztecs great. Well, it did not make the Hunt family great. My dad, who had an iron stomach, it was not a great later experience for him, but that was when I first fell in love with it. 90, I said it earlier, favorite World Cup of all. Who gets 35 days with their parents, no technology? And the two really cool memories of that with my dad is we had a deal with each other. We ate gelato every single night. So we found it. Some nights we'd be wandering the streets to find a gelato cart. And he loves swimming in pools, especially hotel pools. And, you're driving. We drove to 21 of those 22 games. And so we would get to hotels at 1 or 2 in the morning. He and I climbed fences together and would go jump in the pool and swim. We were kicked out more than once by hotel security out of the pool. But that was something that he really enjoyed doing. And that's a lifetime memory. 94, look. It's here. It's the United States. The U.S. team does well in it. I mean, my dad's biggest fear of 94 was that the U.S. team wasn't going to advance, and he didn't want that. And they did. They advanced. I was a ball boy at the game at the Cotton Bowl against Spain, South Korea. They found me recently on tape. And I was told before being a ball boy, they said, whatever you do, if there's a goal or a red card, don't celebrate, don't cheer. And so in my 3 seconds of fame on the camera, Spain has just scored an amazing goal. And I'm just standing there in this austere look on my face, trying to remember what the FIFA rep had told me. 98 France, walking the Champs-Elysees after France beats Brazil in the final. And I'm not even mentioning these great games. 86 Guadalajara, we had France against Brazil, penalty kicks. I was behind the goal for that game for the penalty kicks. 94 is one of the greatest matches ever played. Brazil-Holland here at the Cotton Bowl, right? Brazil wins that on its way to winning the final. Like I said, 98, doing that, traveling around with my parents' France. 2002 was a great World Cup to see. I think the most interesting thing about 2002 is it's one of those stories of planting seeds of soccer like 94 did for MLS. Now you see why Spain and South Korea have been so good since about 2018 to today is because those players are now the products of that. And that's the success story of it. Great games. My dad did manage to get robbed within the first 48 hours. So no cash, no game tickets. So he hully-gullied around, and then somebody some point early on told my dad in 2002 that he could stick a card in the cash machine and cash would come out. Well, he stuck his primary card in there and asked for a PIN. He panicked, started pressing it, shredded his card. As my dad, eventually I make it over there, with him, and we go around and have a great time. 06 Germany. I mean, the incredible. I mean, I in Berlin, we're staying at the Adlon Hotel, and I was swimming there. This is a funny memory, but I was in the pool with João Havelange and Sepp Blatter, and I'm swimming. And at one point, I made aware that I'm inconveniencing their walk in the pool. They were walking while I was swimming, so I moved over to the wall. Not to create too much wake, and it wasn't like I was a great swimmer, but I was doing it for exercise. But experiencing what soccer is there and how well run the Bundesliga. That's a model sports league.
Yeah, no, I got to jump in though. Yeah, you mentioned FIFA.
Mm-hmm.
We were involved in the bid that was hopefully going to bring the World Cup to the United States in 2022. It didn't. It went to Qatar. My perception of that was that the reason we didn't get it was there were some shenanigans. I'll put that nicely. Give the perception of dealing with FIFA now and what that organization is and how it's changed over the years.
Well, one, it's a gigantic organization. And you're right. There was definitely some things that were brought to light with the 2018 bid that went to Russia and 22 that went to Qatar.
Exactly, both of them.
When the FBI gets involved, it changes the dynamics of things. But I'll say under Gianni's leadership now, Infantino, who's the head of FIFA, I think they do a great job, but they do it their own way, right? And I actually have to credit them for being consistent, because doing a sporting event in the United States versus doing it somewhere else, that may not have a sport-centric culture, it can be very difficult. So they have incredibly high standards in how they think about things. And I give this example. I think in 1986, there may have been only 2 price categories for tickets. Just think about that. Maybe there were 3, but I can remember in Italy there were 3 per category. And my dad, by the way, who was a very frugal man on a lot of things, I saw in those 22 matches, most of them were category 3. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, I sat in the San Siro in 1990 in Milan, Italy, near the top where those red beams are in that stadium. But, even today, we don't have a ton of price categories. I mean, if you think about how we price stuff in the NFL or the NBA, even Major League Soccer, we have a million different price categories because there are different revenue opportunities that exist.
So are these games going to be affordable to people?
Yeah, that's gotten a little bit of a bad rap on some stuff. I'm always worried about ticket prices, right? You want to maximize revenue, but you can't do it at the expense of the fans. And so it's an incredibly delicate balance. I know FIFA has diligently tried to make tickets affordable. They've gone back a couple of times to this, and I'm always going to worry about the fan. I said it earlier. My father goes in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1972. He accepted on behalf of the football fans of America. The fans are what make our game great. Our fans are what make FC Dallas. Our fans are what make the Kansas City Chiefs.
So has the corruption gotten better? Has it eased?
There's been no experience of that.
Yeah.
I've had in fact, there have been a whole lot of rules in place about, simple things like gifting when we were welcoming. What's been maybe most interesting is I guarantee when you worked on this World Cup bid, the documents were probably, if you stacked them up, it's probably something like this. Now it's volumes of plans, human rights plan, security plan, sustainability plan, the airport, sex trafficking, all these things. I mean, these plans, and they're so thoughtful. So I give them a lot of credit. I mean, look, there were clearly bad actors. We saw what happened to them, and it's always a good life rule when the FBI gets involved. You gotta listen, but they run, I think, what is a great organization now. But again, there are massive differences in how we think about it. Now FIFA's open, to their credit, offices in Miami. Dallas was a finalist for it. I thought we were lucky to get some of their commercial side here in Dallas, and it didn't quite happen, although they spent a ton of time here from Miami back and forth, and they recognize the opportunity in this market. It's a great market, but yes, they've evolved But when you have so many constituents that you have to please, right? And how somebody might say, how in the world in this country do I get the benefit of the World Cup in the United States, Mexico? And so they're all constantly having to move around. Gianni told me I was having lunch with him before the Chiefs-Philly Super Bowl, which didn't quite go our way. I was having lunch with him, and I asked him, and I think he said he travels 300 days a year. And he's at from the smallest confederation you can imagine to, over here to Europe to Champions League. And he is really a global ambassador for him. And I was giving him a hard time at that breakfast. I said, you guys the World Cup final should have been in Dallas. I thought our bid was much better than anybody else's. And, and he was being nice to me because he's a friend. And I said, just so you know, so we want the Women's World Cup final in 2031 in Dallas. We will do a great job. We're going to show you how we do things bigger and better in Texas.
Why didn't we get the final?
I think just telling the rest of the world that they picked Dallas over New York. And New York still has that kind of lure as the financial capital of the world and Broadway and everything else that goes with it. And it's a great city. But, I mean, the statistics are showing what's happening here in Texas, specifically in Dallas. Yeah. I said, there's a reason why everybody is moving here. It's not because it's in the middle of the country. It's because
and I think why we were disappointed. At the same time, you got to come back and say Dallas has the most matches, 9 matches. Yeah. It has, as you pointed out earlier, the press center. So a lot of good things came our way that are superior to anybody else on the map.
This is the epicenter of World Cup 2026. 9 matches, International Broadcast Center, 2 base camps, Sweden at Toyota Stadium and Soccer Center in Frisco, and Czechia, also known as the Czech Republic, in Mansfield. So we have all of these things going on, and it's great. And this is a commercial for us. I mean, this is one of the great honors of my entire life to represent this community for World Cup 2026. And this is our global commercial to show that we're ready for Super Bowls and more All-Star games and national championship football games, the arts, everything. We're ready for it. We welcome all. And we're ready for it.
So what's that fan experience going to be like at Dallas Stadium? Because we can't call it AT&T Stadium, but what's going to be different than someone who would attend, say, a Cowboys game?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones, and I'm waiting to see the final maps, is the perimeters that they build around sure feels a whole lot like a Super Bowl. In fact, I mean, you were asking about World Cup memories.
Well, you've actually said publicly that this is like having 9 Super Bowls, right?
It's like having 9 Super Bowls. The average stay of a visitor for the World Cup will approach 9 days. The average visitor for a Super Bowl is a hair under 3 days. So this is like having 9 Super Bowls here. They stay in the communities or travel around. And look, again, how about the winter? We get 9, Houston has 7, and Kansas City has 6. We have 22 games in this region. We will be the hub of this. Austin will win. Oklahoma City will win. These communities, East and West, will win because people want to experience this Texas culture. I mean, Fort Worth. I mean, my big pitch to FIFA was you will not get a more unique bid out of any city. You have the global powerhouse that is Dallas, the economic engine, plus the cultural authenticity of Fort Worth. You just won't get a better experience for fans. And oh, by the way, our facilities are world-class. And so I think the big thing that people will notice is that you will probably big perimeters. FIFA is going to allow tailgating. We're still working on that. I mean,
and that was a little bit of a compromise because they're not used to tailgating.
They're not used to tailgating at all. Well, I mean, stadiums around the world, people don't understand there are no parking spaces. In a lot of stadiums, you walk. Yeah. You take the metro. You take the whatever to get there, the bus. I mean, I laugh in 1990, my father got pickpocketed on a bus. And the guy dropped the wallet on the ground. My dad slaps his foot down on his wallet. And the guy next to him was trying to point out who was pickpocketing my dad. And my dad was just staring at the ceiling. There won't be a lot of those type of experiences that you'll have there. But again, we have all of these things. This is just going to set the stage going forward. But you're right. We're working with a new FIFA, new leadership. They've done a great job on how they think about the commercial rights. But I think the frontier is wide open, right?
But you're also going to see some differences. Kyle alluded to it's Dallas Stadium, and it's more than Dallas Stadium. They have enough leverage that they take the logos, with one exception, all the logos off of all the stadiums across the country. So there's no SoFi, there's no Mercedes-Benz. It is Atlanta, it's Los Angeles, and it's Dallas. And in our stadium here, we're going to have natural turf.
Yep. This is mind-blowing, the process, and the Dutch have been real leaders in this. And by the way, I can't wait to welcome the Orange Army to Dallas.
It's so fun.
And their bus. I mean, this is going to be wild. I mean, people have no idea the passion that these fans have, and we get to have a match with them, which I think the Holland-Japan is one of the most underrated matches in the entire tournament. I mean, I think that's a top match. But you're right. The names come off the stadium. There's no Ford deck there, and there's none of that. I mean, literally, FIFA I think they have 19 global partners that they're going to honor with sponsorship. And you're right, AT&T is covered up. And look, a lot of these contracts are negotiated with naming rights partners that if you have these truly one-off unicorn events, that you have to cover up your signage. No different than when we were hosting the FCS National Championship game at Toyota Stadium and Soccer Center.
Yeah.
We had to cover up a bunch of our sponsors. The one we couldn't cover up was Toyota. But for that one, we covered up a ton of signage for the NCAA. Every building does with this. We're dealing with it at Arrowhead. We're going to cover up a bunch of our sponsorship there. But the economics of this and their sponsorship is they're focused on maximizing the opportunity. And look, they get a bad rap on the ticket revenue. They get a bad rap on sponsorship. This money doesn't just go into people's pockets. This goes to support the game around the world and initiatives around the world. So it is growing the game. But it is a delicate balance, right? You squeeze in every last dollar is always complicated, but you also have to recognize this is the engine that supports soccer around the rest of the world, men's and women's.
You and the committee have said for our community, this is worth a $2 billion impetus into the economy. $2 billion real?
$2 billion's real. It is real. And look, we have the added benefit having Argentina twice, but not having their base camp. They say we're going to have 100,000 Argentinians show up, and we're going to have the Swedish contingent and Czechia and England. We also have such a diverse number. Japan will come in mass for this. It's hotels, it's restaurants,
England, Croatia,
arts. I mean, England, that is the match of all matches.
Yeah, that is the match.
Yeah. I mean, the story on that, which is really interesting, is every match had a possible 2 destinations, if I understood how everything went. And so England, Croatia, once it was drawn and I started understanding, I'm sitting there at the Kennedy Center, Clark's sitting next to me. I about jumped out of my seat and cheered when I understood what the possibility was that we could have England, Croatia, because that was the match of all matches. But Toronto was the community that had the other chance at it. Well, their field there, is a Major League Soccer stadium. It's where Toronto FC plays. Yeah, it's small. I mean, it's smaller. And I was sitting there going, and they did a bunch of renovations. And I think they've told me, and I use this with they have told me that they could do 50,000 people or plus or minus at the venue or whatever. And I just said, look, at the time we can do 85, whatever the final number is there. And just the sheer economics of
So how did they determine where the matches went down?
Well, I mean, they sat in a room after the draw was done and went all the way till, I believe, probably 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 3 a.m.
So it was just the FIFA Executive Committee?
FIFA Executive Committee with some special consultants, and they sat there and worked through it and allocated the matches where they thought. And, I mean, of course, you don't have a true line of sight, but I was like, guys, you're talking about a massive venue that can generate so much revenue again, and again, is one of the major sports stadiums in the entire world. It is the stadium. And look, no slight to Toronto, and it's a great sports community for sure. And so I know there were a lot of games allocated around, but look, we came up in a situation, and if you look at our elimination games too, that we have the possibility of hosting, we could have the U.S. on July 3rd.
Yeah.
We could have the U.S. on July 14th in the semifinal. Could we imagine a day where the U.S. plays in a World Cup semifinal? And people ask me to define success of World Cup 2026. Yeah. Success is this, that the U.S. plays in a World Cup semifinal within 8 years. That is be the success of World Cup 2026 if it sets the stage.
So what's success this World Cup?
What success this World Cup? One is it grows all soccer at all levels. Okay. Doesn't matter MLS, USL, does not matter indoor soccer, youth soccer, right? Inspires kids that would not have picked football or would have picked football or basketball instead of picking soccer to say, hey, I want to go do that. I want to represent my hometown club, FC Dallas. I want to go play for the U.S. national team program. I want to play in a World Cup, because we're starting to get really great athletes, but we still don't have a lot of our top athletes playing that. We have the facilities to train them. We have the education and the coaches to train them. We have the ancillary outside of soccer stuff to train them, but we still need more top athletes, because soccer around the world is getting their best athletes. You go to Brazil and you look at their national team, that's a lot of their very best.
So does our national team get out of the group?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I'm convinced our national team gets out of the group.
You've got a pretty favorable group, most folks would say.
Yeah, I do. Turkey worries me, though. And the country I used to call Turkey now is Turkey. And they have Archer Guler there and Yildiz. So two of the very best players 21 and under in the world are there. And look, when you come out of qualifying in those regions like they did, they are very complicated regions to make it through, and very difficult. And they came through a very difficult playoff situation. And so that coalesces a team that has to go through that adversity. So a little bit worried. Paraguay has a lot of very good players. Australia can have some good moments, but I feel like we're coming out. Obviously, I don't want the U.S. here on July 3rd. I'm sorry for anybody who has tickets to that. I want us here on July 14th.
Yeah,
that's what really matters when you're doing this. So it's an exciting moment in time, but if we can have that Lionel Messi or that Michael Jordan moment as a result of World Cup, we will one day produce one of the greatest soccer players in the world, or produce the greatest. And we may produce several of them because we have the athletes, again, we have the facilities, all these things. Other thing I really want, though, is that this creates lifetime memories for families and friends. Whether you go to a match or you go to FIFA Fan Fest down at Fair Park, have that, our soccer celebration we're having up in Frisco, to get people together to congregate, to enjoy sports.
So for somebody that may not go to the 9 matches, what is their World Cup for other to do? What the community? What else is out there?
Well, 2 big ones. FIFA Fan Fest down at Fair Park. I mean, that is a 30-plus day celebration of the World Cup. We expect upwards of 30,000+ a day for it. You can go down there, watch the matches. There's tons of interactives, working with local sponsors, the supporters of it.
And Clyde Warren Park is going to have all the matches, all the matches, not just the 9, but all of them.
Yeah, we'll show at Fair Park. We'll show 96 of them, 104 matches, I believe. Up in Frisco, it'll be something very similar we're going to do right there in Simpson Plaza in front of City Hall. Clyde Warren Park is going to be an unbelievable experience to do that. So I hope people congregate, experience it. Also, we are raising funds. That's what these supporters sponsorships are for, the 10 we get to sell, the donations that we get to sell, the commissions on tickets and other things. We are raising money so that we can leave a community impact, community fields, community pitches around. This is something I'm so proud that we do at the FC Dallas Foundation. We built 15 of them, everything from resurfacing a tennis court to a full-size pitch. We're providing kids an opportunity to play soccer in a safe space, right? It may be the single best thing that happens in their entire day, right? We can't, again, I talked earlier about walking in other shoes. You don't know what that's really like. They may not know where their next meal is coming. Parents may not be home. They may not have a lot of structure, but the opportunity to get out, play, healthy, active lifestyles, maybe have a coach who's a mentor, who's a positive influence in their life. That's what we hope for. So we hope to build a number of these community pitches. We're working on them. That's a big one. Funds left over for Women's World Cup 2031. I keep talking about it. I think this will be a very difficult process. I don't think, not difficult, I think it'll be a very different process. I don't think FIFA will do the same process we just went through. They've said they're going to 48 teams, 104 matches, which is the right format. But selling local supporters sponsorships is complicated because FIFA has their global partners. And when you're in conflict with a global partner, that's something you can't sell. I mean, we would have had a number of them done immediately, right, here in this community, and we're getting close to getting, I think, all 10 done. And I've stepped up as one, not only as co-chair, but I chose to be a local supporting sponsor of the tournament here. This was important to me. You can put your time and effort, but you need to put put your money to, where it is, because you're leading something. And this was just something really important to me because I recognize the good of the game of soccer. But I hope this leaves a generational impact and grows the game. Here's a sports stat for you. They say after a nation hosts a World Cup, as long as the team is somewhat successful, the domestic league's attendance rises by 30%.
30% is a big number.
It's a huge number, because if you translate that to eyeballs watching MLS on Apple TV or watching the other leagues, it raises their media right values and it makes it even more valuable the next time around.
That's great. Terrific. Dan, thanks so much for being with us. You've been humble. You talked about humility as a leadership trait of your dad. You have been very humble on this, but I know that you have been at the forefront through not only this bid and the success that we're going to have this year, but going back many years, your work with FC Dallas, but beyond that, the work to those earlier bids that we talked about too. You also talked about the contributions that you and your family have made. We didn't talk about some that go far beyond sports, contributions of art to the DMA, other points like that. We are very appreciative of everything you've done, everything your family's done, and we look forward to hopefully pretty exciting 30 days coming in June and July.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for having me on, and I'm so excited. Again, it is such an honor to get to share this with my fellow Texan. I'm so proud to represent this community, and I know that soccer and sports can change people's lives and bring us all together. So it's been a great honor to be with you guys today.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching today's episode. Again, today's episode is sponsored by Clay Cooley Automotive, a family-owned, family-operated automotive company serving the local DFW Metroplex for over 22 years.